Hello everybody, this is Matt Ward, Associate Pastor at First Baptist Church, Thompson, Georgia, and the strangest thing happened last week. We live streamed a worship service. We did a halfway decent job, and nobody batted an eye. So let me repeat this. First Baptist Thompson, a church that to my knowledge has never put a video recording of a worship service anywhere, let alone live streamed a service, and nobody blinked. If you'd said that to me 2 years ago, let alone 6 months ago, I would have immediately thought, well, this is headline type news. But it wasn't. Why is that? Because circumstances made it necessary. And when something is necessary, doing it doesn't come with hoopla. It comes with expectation. It needs to get done, so get it done. It's why churches have staffs to figure things like that out. But do you know what people are really excited about? They're excited about physically coming back together to come to a worship service. There's hardly a conversation I have in which someone doesn't say, I can't wait to come back to church. That forces me. It forces me to remember what's actually important. Now, it's no surprise to me, and it really should be no surprise to anyone who knows us, that it took something like a worldwide catastrophe for First Baptist Thompson to begin to put videos of ourselves out there in the internet. We believe very strongly in community, in gathering together. We gather for worship. We gather for Bible study. We gather to share a meal, to share life. We are Baptists, after all. We are a simple people of the book. And the book focuses on churches as people who gather together. And so we're met with this circumstance, this scenario in which something like putting our services on the fancy internet is acknowledged. But the prospect of coming back together for worship, it's embraced with excitement. And that's how it should be. Maybe we're all reminded of what's really important, and that's people. Now, that begs a callback to a video I posted a couple of weeks ago about real church versus virtual church. If a church only exists online, a virtual church, is it really a church? Well, even if you say that it is, you still have to acknowledge that it's impoverished because we were meant for physical community. If you remove personal relationships, much of the New Testament doesn't make any sense anymore. And that's the point for us, is that we're not a church that only exists online. And if you're worried about this whole movement, remember that. We are not a church that only exists online. We are not replacing in-person worship services with videos. We are multiplying our in-person worship service by making it available for anyone, anywhere in the world to be able to view, to see what's going on here, even if they can't be physically present with us. Now, yes, might this enable people to stay home? Sure. But don't you think they might have come up with an excuse eventually to stay home if that's what they want? Is it not better for them to at least have a way of staying engaged than to have nothing? Now, you can also counter, but can a person really be a part of a church if all they're doing is occasionally watching a video and maybe sending in a check every once in a while? Well, no, of course not. That's not what the New Testament describes as being a part of a church. A New Testament church is based on relationships, but that is a start. Don't relationships have to start somewhere? Relationships are based on personal interaction. They're based on the investment of time and energy and emotion. And they take time. And they all have to start somewhere. So maybe we're just creating another starting point. You picking up the phone to make a call to a friend, that's a starting point. You knocking on your neighbor's door to say hello, that's a starting point. You talking to the parent next to you in line at school, that's a starting point. The internet can be another starting point. Not an ending point, a starting point. And if you think about it, this is just another in a long string of starting places that technology has made possible for us. Remember that there was a time when sending an email was new. There was a time when making a phone call was new. There was a time when hopping in your car and driving to see somebody was new. There was a time when being on television was new. There's a time when being on the radio was new. There was a time when advertising in the newspaper was new. And now, with the click of a button, people all over the world can watch our service live for free. Or they can watch a recording of it whenever they want to for free. And 5 years from now, who knows what it's going to be? And then 5 years from then, who knows what it's going to be? Well, say that. I know a few things. I know that what we're doing now will be considered part of the past. And I know that what we'll be doing then will be considered, well, let me get to that. We can put just about everything that happens in church in that kind of a progression. So think about this with me. A long time ago, pastors wore the same thing that everybody else wore. Why? Because that was their option. That's what anybody had to wear. And then the church became institutionalized, and they wanted all of their priests to wear robes that distinguished them. And that was controversial in certain places. And then suits were invented. And some churches wanted their pastors to wear suits, and some people found that controversial. And then suits and ties and jackets changed, and pastors changed what they wore based on that, and it was controversial to some people. And now, to get back to the people, you see pastors wearing short-sleeved shirts, and that's controversial. Who knows what will happen in 5 years? Well, one thing we do know is that it will be controversial. Or we can think about music. A long time ago, before instruments were prevalent or people who knew how to play them, Christians just sat around and sang. That's what they did. And then a type of pipe organ was invented, and the people who built the massive cathedrals wanted a pipe organ to fill the space with sound, and it was controversial. Many of them were destroyed during the Reformation, and until the early 1800s or so, most Americans thought of the organ as the devil's instrument. And then what happened? Pianos. And some of the larger churches had to have a piano. And then microphones, guitars, electric guitars, drum kits, that little cave that you can put the drum kit in. And all of those things were controversial. And then we had tape players for the tracks for a song. And then a CD player. And then a DVD player. And then downloading things from the internet. All of which came with controversy. And then something else is going to be invented. And it'll be controversial. And none of that is new. And that reminds me of the message of Ecclesiastes. Let me read to us from chapter 1, verses 6 through 9. Blowing toward the south, then turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling along, and on its circular courses the wind returns. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they flow again. All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. So there is nothing new under the sun. So let me put it this way. Putting church services online, obviously that's new. The internet didn't exist 50 years ago. Facebook didn't exist 20 years ago. The Sling Studio tool that we use for our video production, that didn't exist 5 years ago. These things are new, aren't they? Well, yes, but that would be missing the point of what the teacher in Ecclesiastes is saying. Is it really new? Well, no. It's just another form of communication based on new technology. And somebody wants to own it. Somebody wants to monetize it. And somebody at this moment is working on the next new thing so they can own it and monetize it. It's not really new. The people who say, this is new, are the people who are trying to make a name for themselves so that they can be remembered in human history as someone. But guess what? The teacher goes on to say this to them. No one remembers the former generation. And even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Why? The wealthy man dies the same as the poor man. The king dies the same as the pauper. The wise man dies the same as the fool. Oppression, toil, and loneliness, they follow every generation. None of this is new. But then the teacher comes to his very famous conclusion. With everything that he has observed over the course of his life, he says this: fear God and keep his commands, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every good deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. And that is where the book of Ecclesiastes go. Work hard, live well, treat people right, but don't get caught up in what we now call the rat race, because it's really just a hamster wheel. You pour your life into something only to find out at the end that you've never gone anywhere. But what does get you somewhere? Living for God and obeying his commandments. What are his commandments? Loving God and loving people. Loving your neighbor. The most important thing is people. So now, let's get back to the basic question when it comes to live streaming our services. Can that be a way of loving people? Yes. We're taking the Word of God, our expressions of the worship of God, how we apply that in our lives, and we're freely sharing it with anybody who wants to hear it. Church members who are homesick, people you know who maybe they're intimidated by crowds or they're not comfortable in a church setting. Yes, that is showing love to those people, but it's not the end. It's just a step. And just like every other new thing that churches have done before, it's just a step. A starting place, perhaps. The how changes. But the what and the why never change. We are a church. We are a group of Christians who are united by our salvation and committed to together doing what God has told us to do in His Word. And that is to be disciples of Jesus Christ and to make other people into disciples of Jesus Christ. Live streaming a church service can be used as a tool toward that end. Coming together to share our walk and our worship, that is who we are. And if everything that has happened over the last few months has forced us to be reminded of what's really important, then at least we can emerge on the other side of this with that. What's important? People. Everything that we can do as a church, if we can direct it toward people, bringing people to Jesus and helping them follow Jesus, then that is a good starting place. And then it's up to us to help take the next steps. And with that in mind, I'm Matt Ward, and I'm signing off.